to another episode of Food for Thought, and today we are joined by Dustin Tanski, the owner of Fass here in Fort Collins. So, how did you get into the specialty food industry?
Well, my wife and I grew up in Fort Collins. We went to Colorado State University for our undergrad and our master's degree. We went to high school here. We're members of this community. I've worked in the front and the back of house of restaurants before. And I knew that I didn't want to open a restaurant. It's a single source of income, driving me crazy. So we actually went more towards the specialty food market, and that's what led us to Fass.
So Dustin will teach us today about the marketing of oils and vinegars, specifically today, and kind of the claims that these marketing advertisements make. Yeah, why don't you take it away?
Okay, so I think part of the reason that claims and marketing exist is because we really eat that up as a culture, figuratively and literally speaking. So when you hear things like cold pressed or extra virgin, or you hear things like balsamic, you hear things like reduction, you hear first cold press, you hear all sorts of terms. You know, I actually have a list of them here that I was thinking about. Marketing fads, fat-free, all-natural, cage-free, product of so-and-so. What do these things actually mean? Not a lot of us actually know, but we know that we are manipulated by it. We know in our labeling, you know, people are picking up items down. They really regard the label because they want to scrutinize every aspect of what it is that they're going to consume. But we forget oftentimes as Americans that we don't eat nutrients. We eat food. Right. So the countries that are outliving us, for instance, and there are many, they are not thinking about increasing or equalizing their omega-6 to omega-3 ratio, or getting the anti-inflammatory benefits of turmeric, or doing anything like that. They just eat. They eat food that's close to its natural source, and they eat as fresh as possible. And as a result of that, they outlive us. You know, especially oil. That's one that, you know, obviously I'm an oil, vinegar, and spice shop, so I really want to talk about the health benefits of oil, for instance. Most of us just think of oil as a lubricant. Here's your pan where heat is conducted. Here's the lubricant that's going to keep whatever item that is from sticking to the pan. Well, a lot of research is showing us that the nutrients that go into oils actually can be really, really good and beneficial to us. And when we take those nutrients out, it can actually be bad for us. Not neutral, bad.
Interesting.
Right. So, case in point with this one is, we used to get about 33% of our calories from fat all the way up until, or about 45%, I'm sorry, 45% of our calories from fat until the 1980s. When the low-fat movement came out, we have reduced that. It's 2014. We've reduced that to 33%. So we used to have 45. Now we have 33, and we're fatter than ever. We're more obese than ever. We're more overweight than ever. And it's because we ingest. First of all, the fats that we're ingesting are not good for us. And second of all, we've increased our consumption of the things that really make us fat: the corn, the wheat, and the soy. The example I give for this a lot is when you have a feedlot. When you send a cow to a feedlot to fatten it up or to marble it before it's slaughtered, they're not feeding it oil to make it fat. They feed it corn and wheat and soy. But we've been manipulated, and part of it is our own fault. We have told businesses forever that we want oil cheap. We want it to have any smoke point. Are you familiar with the concept of smoke point? Yes. The temperature at which oil burns. And we want it to last forever. And so businesses that create this oil can go, cool, we can actually do that for you. So and we can accomplish all three of those goals. So they take something like an olive oil, you know, which olive oil is something everybody's heard about olive oil. They take olive oil, when you cold press, when you extract it the way it was done 10,000 years ago, you only get about 60% of the oil. So there's still stuff left. There's a cream left after they press that. Well, that gets sold to another company who uses more stringent methods to refine it. Because really, that's what happens. After it's cold pressed, the next part about it is refining. They will refine it and refine it and refine it until there's nothing almost left of that oil. And they will dissolve that with toxic chemicals like hexane, which is a petroleum product, to extract the last little bit out. But when they do that, it creates an off color and an odor in that oil. So they just solve that by bleaching and deodorizing it. But at that point, you have made it chemically inert. But but it's giving you everything you asked for. It's giving it to you cheap, it's at a high smoke point, and it's going to last forever on your shelf. It's kind of like drinking distilled water than the water that exists naturally. It's a non-nutrient, but we ask for that. Okay. Right? So I don't like to deal with, when people come into my store, first of all, smoke point it's not near as simple as people make it sound. You've heard olive oil burns at this temperature. Yes. Coconut oil burns at this temperature. It's not that simple. It matters how much you're using. What is the humidity in the air? How old your oil is? What is the condition of your oil? Is it extra virgin? Is it refined? Is it whatever? It's a lot more simple, but the people who want to sell you things, if a store wants to sell you extra virgin olive oil, they're going to tell you you can do anything with it. If a company wants to sell you coconut oil, they're going to tell you you can do anything with it. Right. The truth is somewhere in the middle. The reality is there are over 750 varieties of olives. Some of them have naturally high smoke points, some of them have naturally lower smoke points, and that's just the product itself, let alone how you're applying heat to it. So don't let people sell you on smoke point. Right. The other thing is shelf life. We have traded our health for shelf life. Huh. So the oils that have a lot of nutrients in them, oftentimes they'll have sediment in them, or they will be an off color, or even like in sunflower oil's case, it'll be waxy at the bottom. And people have discarded their oils, or it will degrade that quality of that oil just a little bit faster. And so we go for something that will last longer, and we've traded our health. So all the micronutrients that exist in there, we've refined out, and now we just created that lubricant, those empty calories between your pan and your food.
Wow, okay. Interesting. Thank you.
You're welcome. So the next thing I'm going to talk about again is balsamic, because all these claims are out there, and so many people come in and are confused, and rightfully so. It's actually deliberate. It's actually deliberate confusion by the people who are marketing these products. So in the 1100s, you have this elixir that was made in Reggiano Emilia and Modena, Italy, and they used to use it for medicinal purposes. So they would take vinegar, they would age that with the grapefruit concentration. So it was the grapes that were available in the region. And in fact, most of them are green, even though we always think of balsamic vinegar as red. It's age and barrels that will turn them their color, the skins of the grape. Anyway, so they used to keep these things under lock and key. Eventually, 1600s, you see the first real recipes come out for what is traditional balsamic vinegar in Modena. They would only give it to royalty. So the Italians they made this item that we know of as balsamic vinegar today. The word balsamic actually means nothing. There's a lot of terms of what people think that it smelled. It smelled balmy when you were in the area, kind of like yeasty, almost like wine making. Okay. Balms were used medicinally. So the word balsamic actually doesn't have a particular meaning, although we associate it with something. What it has come today to mean for a lot of people, you might say thick. You might think grape. You might think Italian. And all of those are kind of rightfully so. Right. But neither the FDA nor the USDA regulate the term balsamic. So they do regulate what is cider vinegar, what is malt vinegar, what is wine vinegar, and what is distilled vinegar. So anybody who's making a product, as long as they define it as balsamic, usually being a base of grape, with grape wine and grapefruit concentration, they could add a fruit juice, and I think they can even call that 100% raspberry balsamic. Right? It takes a little bit of education for us to go, no, we actually use the same method as the Italians with different fruit. Okay. So our raspberry vinegar will be raspberry fruit wine and raspberry fruit concentration. It becomes reflected in a price point as well. People will walk in and they will be surprised that they've been to another concept where they've had what they don't even know is an infusion, for $5 or $6, and they might pay double that for ours because we actually have the fruit concentration from the fruit. Right. So what Fass means by balsamic, other than the traditional Italian balsamics, which are what they are, it's a traditional, regional, artisanal product, kind of like saying champagne. Right. We do, for instance, our apple would be same method, different fruit. Okay. Apple fruit concentration, apple cider vinegar, and then you get the health benefits of both the vinegar and the apple. Okay.
Great.
Yeah.
Awesome. So if it's not the grapes that make it balsamic vinegar, where does all the other fruits and all the other flavors kind of come from?
That is a fantastic question, because oftentimes that's never addressed, right? Because we just think of balsamic as something, nobody ever asks where the raspberry comes from in the infused vinegar. Right. But we actually take a lot of pride in that. Most of our fruits come from Walter, Germany. This is the farming region in southwest Germany, close to Austria, Switzerland, northern Italy. So you have a lot of farmland out there that's producing this fruit. Some fruits, in case of our star forest raspberry, actually come from a wild, they're wild Polish raspberries.
Wow.
Our calamansi fruit and our mangoes come from the Philippines.
Okay.
They are created into vinegars at Waldberg, Germany. Germany, our company Fass has been making this for over 20 years. And, you know, Germany has a long tradition of having sweet wines. Rieslings are Germans, which are a sweet wine. It's a natural progression to letting that, you know, if that wine continues its fermentation, it's going to become vinegar.
Right.
We get that question. I love that question on shelf life of vinegar.
Right.
Shelf life of vinegar is forever. It's already gone bad.
Yeah.
Right? Vinegar in Latin, vin is wine and agre is sour.
Yeah.
So you have that sour wine process. We just let it keep its fermentation.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you.
Welcome.
So Dustin here will teach us how to make a great vinaigrette with quality ingredients. And I think first you said you were going to explain the components first?
Yeah, I want to talk a little bit about the number one question people give me is, what do I do with it? What do I do with it? What do I do with it? I hear that so many times a day. I find it odd that everybody I know has a bottle of either cider vinegar or white vinegar or both at their house. You can't find somebody without these ingredients, and yet the word vinaigrette, I don't know, it's too French sounding or something, but it has some sort of complicated connotation to it. In fact, some people will just try vinegar and think it's a vinaigrette. A vinaigrette is a combination of oil, vinegar, and spice, where you create an emulsion, or you get the dressing to stick together,
right,
for lack of a better term, because oil and vinegar taste great, but they're not good friends in a jar, right? They separate. We'll talk into the chemistry about that today because it will bore all your viewers to sleep.
All right.
But what we're going to do is we're going to have a couple of quality ingredients, and what I like to show people, and if we were wandering around the store, I would talk about this, and it honestly, for the most part, doesn't matter what you do for the vinaigrette as long as you follow a couple simple rules. I would love for your viewers to think about method before they thought about what they were going to eat. If you learn a method, you can enhance that method, you can manipulate that method. It's kind of like understanding English before you can write a book. And before you can butcher the rules of how to write a book, you have to do it right the first time, right? Not everybody can be Hemingway.
Right.
We're going to kind of be Hemingway with the vinaigrette.
Okay.
So what I have here is a caprese salad dressing, in essence.
Okay.
So we have, in essence, a pizza spice. It has sun-dried tomato in it. We have one of our traditional Italian balsamics. We call this one platinum. Platinum. 1 part and 2 parts oil. This is a tomato extra virgin olive oil. What's interesting about this is it's tomato, not in the sense of like tomato sauce, but in the fruit aspect of tomato. If we think about tomato, if we regard it for other than just what we know in its ketchup form or whatever, it's a berry. It's a giant berry. It has a fruitiness to it. So this has a fruitiness to it. So I picked these because the ingredients tie together. And you'll notice in here that I'm not going to stress about it that I have just a little bit more oil than vinegar, because I'm not worried. As long as the ingredients are fantastic, the dressing is going to be fantastic, and I'm going to have you make it.
Okay.
And it's going to be in this order. The order is important because it takes a long time for the oil to emulsify if you don't do it correctly. If you put the oil in first, you have a harder time mixing the ingredients together. Luckily, we have a vessel that's going to incorporate these pretty easily.
All right.
So I'm going to let you taste all these first. This is the, you taste that by itself. That's what we call Muscatelo Napolitano. That's, in essence, think like a pizza spice.
Oh yeah.
Oregano, garlic, sun-dried tomato-y.
It's like if you put, basically if you dry pizza sauce, that's what it tastes like.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's a good way to think about it. Now your traditional Italian balsamic, you should get the harmony of sweet and tart. It's another thing what balsamic should be. I hate balsamic reductions, they're only sweet. So that's for another show.
Wow, that's really nice. So one question I did have about balsamics.
Yeah.
A lot of times marketing will say that it's aged.
Ah.
So what does that mean, and like how does that work with your platinum?
Okay. I'm going to get to, we will do a small section on that. That requires a visual aid.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
I will address that though, because boy, can you be manipulated by it.
All right.
Okay. So now this is tomato extra virgin olive oil. This you kind of want to slurp. If you do that, it pulls all the air across your tongue and you get its subtle flavors, and you will taste the fruit aspect of tomato.
Yeah.
It's nice and fresh with the fruity aspect of tomato.
Yeah. It's not as sometimes olive oil can be a little spicy.
Yeah.
It's not. I like this a lot. It's more mild. It is fruity.
Yeah. You might get a little pepperiness in there later, and that's also for another show. So what you're going to do in this order, 1, 2, 3, right? You have 1 part, 2 part, 3 part.
Okay.
So 1 part spice, which you'll put in first. It's our clever little vessel. Okay, then you're gonna put in, 2 parts of vinegar.
Okay.
And kind of 3 parts oil. Just a little bit more oil and vinegar, and spice to taste is what I tell people.
Okay. Okay.
So now you're gonna put your cap. You're gonna put the top on here, and you're just gonna go. Crazy by shaking it around, and you should be able to emulsify that dressing. If you're gonna use a bowl and a whisk, because here's a little trick for your viewers at home.
Okay.
Oftentimes I will put my dressing at the bottom of a bowl.
Right.
And I will whisk it. Right, the spice first, then the vinegar, then the oil.
Okay.
And you want to whisk that oil slowly in there. It's going to create that dressing.
Okay.
Then when you put your salad ingredients in there, you continue to toss that, because nothing's worse than having all the dressing on the top of your salad because you poured it on top, and then half of your salad has nothing in it.
That's true.
Right?
Yeah.
So that should have emulsified the dressing. See
Wow.
how it's staying together?
Yeah.
Now you have dressing. Now let's pretend this is, we're all price conscious here. Let's pretend that this was a bottle of mustard. Stone ground mustard, you buy some really fancy ones, I'm sure. Well, at the bottom of this, you're not going to get all that mustard out. There's mustard down the side, there's mustard at the bottom.
Right.
You put these ingredients in that jar, you toss it together, and then you have the bottom of the jar dressing.
Okay.
You do the same thing with salsa. You do the same thing with ketchup. You can do the same thing with a lot of your condiments. Relish, it doesn't matter. You'll make a dressing as long as you follow those rules. So now, we're going to try this dressing. Okay? Give your caprese dressing a try. Don't be afraid to take the crap out of this face. Right? All those flavors are mixing together. Doesn't matter what we do, it's going to be awesome.
Delicious.
Right.
That's really nice.
So along with the idea of what do I do with it, what do I do with it, what do I do with it, which you hear 100 times a day. Now you can get really specific, because it seems like the sucker's bet to me to do a salad dressing.
Right.
The customer that come in, most of them want to know that.
Right.
And I get smart alecky, somebody will come into the store and say, okay, I'm looking for a salad dressing. I'm like, cool, that's only everything we have. That's really, really easy. So sometimes I want to talk about what you do with it outside of the dressing. Well, there's a little trend right now called molecular gastronomy, which I think you were alluding to a little bit earlier, where you can manipulate these things. These are what happens when you make, in essence, caviar out of balsamic vinegar. You use a chemical method to firm up balsamic vinegar into a ball, and then it will have that potent taste of vinegar, because it is only vinegar as a caviar.
Wow, that's nice.
Yeah. And some people don't want to put darker, on a spring salad, sometimes it's too dark, it would ruin the color, and it's about presentation as well. Right. So you might use those little balsamic caviar with extra virgin olive oil, wouldn't throw off, plus all your friends say, wow, when you do that.
That's awesome. Okay. Great.
So you had asked me about the question of age, which is something other than when you get to really, really high-end vinegars, like we'll have a bottle of what's called Traditionale Extra Vecchio here, which can cost $250 a bottle.
Wow.
Most people, I would explain that process for another show. Most people don't have the money to spend on that kind of thing, but those do have specific ages. A Traditionale is a minimum of 12 years. Minimum is important.
Okay.
Extra Vecchio is a minimum of 25 years. It's important. I'm going to show you why minimum is important. So, Aceto Balsamico di Modena has very specific rules on how it has to be made. It has to be aged for a minimum of 60 days. It has to be used, grapes, and the grape concentration have to be from Reggio Emilia, Italy. In that region, it has to be made, manufactured, packaged in that region.
Okay.
They do that because they want to preserve the artisanal process that is what their balsamic vinegar. Well, we don't want to get caught up with the age, and this is exactly what I'm going to show you, because vinegars are made in the Solera method. Solera method, sol being part of the sun, was originally designed for sherry. They wanted sherry to ferment in a certain way. They wanted to get the concentration of the fruit to ferment, so they would put it in barrels and leave it in the sun to ferment. Now, what they end up doing, over time, they have found to get a consistent product and to get the best tasting product, oftentimes it's a mixture of products per year. Okay. So for our purposes, we're going to pretend that this is a fancy bottle that we're going to bottle things in. Right. This is 3-year aged vinegar. Okay. Right? This is 2 year, this is 1 year, and this is unaged. Okay. So we've gone through this product, we've let everything rest for a year. This is coming in brand new to us, right? The grapefruit concentration and the grapefruit wine. So now for this season, we take this 3-year delicious vinegar, pour almost all of it off, but leaving some, right? We bottle this off and we sell it. Now, that's the 3-year vinegar. So now I'm taking 2-year vinegar and adding it to the 3-year. I'm taking 1-year vinegar and adding it to the 2-year. I'm taking the grapefruit concentration and I'm taking the grape wine and we're gonna let it set for a year.
Okay.
In a year's time, this is aged, it's still 3-year-old vinegar, right? Because it has majority of 2 and 1 and unaged vinegar in it, correct?
Right.
We've let it age a year, so it's a minimum of 1, or in Chio Balsamico's case, a minimum of 60 days.
Right.
And this is still that product that's a minimum. So if we do this product, if we do this process 30 times over, could we claim that there was 33-year-old vinegar in there? You could, right? But because we leave a little bit every time.
Right.
But how old is this vinegar? 3 years. The majority of it is 3 years. So what I don't like about when we're talking about age is that you hear the term a lot too, up to, or this is an 18-year age, or something like that. You will hear all the time, where it could be a manipulation of that term age. So until you get to the really high-end vinegars, which only have 2 designations, remember, Traditionale is a minimum of 12 years, Extra Vecchio is a minimum of 25. Minimum is important because that is much less manipulative than saying, you know, we have 100-year-old vinegar because we've done this process a couple times. Right? Does that help you understand the Slayer method?
Yes.
In general, this would be, this is actually vertical. So the large jars, the large barrels are on top, and then it's emptied into a pyramid until you have the very small ones at the bottom, and that's the ones they drain off the bottle. And then they'll empty into the other ones. Does that help?
Yes.
Slayer method.
Awesome. Okay. Well, thank you again, Dustin, and thank you for teaching us about the quality of oils, vinegars, and spices that you have in the shop. And I can't wait for you guys to see next week's episode of the Food for Thought. Thank you for joining us again, and see you next week.